Henry Siegman, president of the U.S. Middle East Project, former head of the American Jewish Congress and the Synagogue Council of America. I started by asking Henry Siegman if he could characterize the situation in Gaza at the moment.
Yes, it's disastrous. It's disastrous both in political terms, which is to say the situation cannot conceivably, certainly in the short run, lead to any positive results, to an improvement in the lives of either Israelis or Palestinians. And of course it's disastrous in humanitarian terms, the kind of slaughter that's taking place there, when one thinks that this is what is necessary for Israel to survive, that the Zionist dream is based on the slaughter of the repeated slaughter of innocents on a scale that we're watching these days on television. That is really a profound crisis should be a profound crisis in the thinking of all of us who are committed to the establishment of the state and to its success.
What do you believe the objectives of Israel are in this present assault, on Gaza?
Well, they have several objectives, though I'm not sure that each of them is specifically responsible for the carnage we're seeing now. It has what seems on the surface a justifiable objective of ending these attacks, the rockets that come from Gaza, and are aimed, it's hard to say they're aimed at civilians because they never seem to land anywhere that causes serious damage, but they could and would have if not for luck. So on the face of it, Israel has a right to do what it's doing now, and of course it's been affirmed by even the President of the United States repeatedly, that no country would agree to live with that kind of a threat repeatedly hanging over it. But what he doesn't add, and what perverts this principle, undermines the principle, is that no country and no people would live the way Gazans have been made to live. And consequently, this moral equation which puts Israel on top as the victim that has to act to prevent its situation from continuing that way, and the Palestinians in Gaza, or Hamas, the organization responsible for Gaza, who are the attackers, our media rarely ever points out that these are people who have a right to live a decent, normal life too. And they too must think, what can we do to put an end to this? And this is why in the Politico article that you mentioned, I pointed out that the question of the morality of Israel's action depends in the first instance on the question, couldn't Israel be doing something in preventing the disaster that is playing out now in terms of the destruction of human lives? Couldn't they have done something that didn't require that cost? And the answer is sure. They could have ended the occupation with results, whatever the risks are, they certainly aren't greater than the price being paid now for Israel's effort to continue and sustain permanently their relationship to the Palestinians.
When you say that Israel could end the violence by ending the occupation, Israel says it does not occupy Gaza, that it left years ago. I wanted to play a clip for you from MSNBC. It was last week, and the host, Joy Reid, was interviewing the Israeli spokesperson, Mark Regev.
Listen, if you'll allow me, Joy, I want to take issue with one important word you said. You said Israel is the occupying authority. You're forgetting Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip. We took down all the settlements, and the settlers who didn't want to leave, we forced them to leave. We pulled back to the 1967 international frontier. There is no Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip. We haven't been there for some 8 years.
Henry Siegman, can you respond?
Yeah. That is, of course, utter nonsense, and for several reasons. First of all, Gaza is controlled completely, like the West Bank, because it is totally surrounded by Israel. Israel could not be imposing the kind of chokehold that it has on Gaza if it were not surrounding, if it's military, we're not surrounding Gaza. And not just on the territory, but also on the air, on the sea. No one there can make a move without coming into contact with Israeli IDF, outside this imprisoned area where Gazans live. So there's no one I have encountered who is involved with international law who's ever suggested to me that in international law Gaza is not considered occupied. So that's sheer nonsense. But there's another point triggered by your question to me, and this is the propaganda machine, and these official spokespeople will always tell you, take a look at what kind of people these are. Here we turn over Gaza to them. And you'd think they would invest their energies in building up the area, making it a model government and model economy. Instead, they're working on rockets. The implication here is that they, in effect, offer Palestinians a mini-state. And they didn't take advantage of it. So the issue isn't really Palestinian statehood. That is the purpose of this kind of critique. And I have always asked myself, and this has a great deal to do with my own changing views about the policies of governments, not about the Jewish state, quote, Jewish state, but of the policies pursued by Israeli governments and supported. They say Israel is a model democracy in the Middle East. So you must assume, the public has to assume some responsibility for what the government does, because they put governments in place. So the question I ask myself, what if the situation were reversed? There is a Talmudic saying in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, Al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkomo. Don't judge your neighbor until you can imagine yourself in his place. So my first question when I deal with any issue related to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, what if we were in their place? What if the situation were reversed and the Jewish population were were told, here you have less than 2% of Palestine, so now behave, no more resistance, and let us deal with the rest. Is there any Jew who would have said this is a reasonable proposition? That we cease our resistance, we cease our effort to establish a Jewish state, at least in one half of Palestine, which is authorized by the UN? Nobody would agree to that. They would say this is absurd.
You're the head, the former head, of one of the leading Jewish organizations, the American Jewish Congress.
Two of them. Also of the Synagogue Council of America.
So these are major establishment Jewish organizations. You said you went to see Khaled Mashal, the head of Hamas, not once, but several times to meet with him. The U.S. government calls Hamas a terrorist organization. They will not communicate with them. They communicate with them through other parties, through other countries to talk to them. talk about your decision to meet with Khalid Mashal, where you met with him, and the significance of your conversations.
Well, first of all, it should be noted that the U.S. has no such policy of not meeting with terrorist organizations. It has a policy of not meeting with Hamas. That's quite different. We're very happy to meet with the Taliban and to negotiate with them. And they cut off hands and heads of people, and they kill girls who go to school. And that didn't prevent the United States from having negotiations with the Taliban. So that's nonsense that we don't talk to terrorist organizations. We talk to enemies if we want to cease the slaughter, and we're happy to do so and to try to reach an agreement that puts an end to it. And why Hamas should be the exception, again, I find dishonest, and the only reason that we do that is in response to the pressures from AIPAC and, of course, Israel's position. The largest caucus, parliamentary caucus in Israel's Knesset, is called the Caucus of Eretz Yisrael HaShlema, to which Likud leads.
Explain that in English.
In English, it means the whole land of Israel. This is a parliamentary caucus, the largest caucus in the Knesset, which is totally dedicated to not permit any government to establish a Palestinian state anywhere in the land of Israel, headed by Likud, senior Likud members of Knesset, and a party that is headed by the Prime Minister of Israel. And what boggles the imagination is that no one talks about this, no one points this out, and no one says, how can you take these positions via Hamas if this is exactly what is going on within your own government that you are heading? And one of the reasons you say you do not have an occupation in place is because you really don't have a united partner, Palestinian partner, to make peace with. And when Palestinians seek to establish that kind of a government, which they just recently did, bringing Hamas into the governmental structure, Palestinian governmental structure, that is headed by Abbas, you seek to destroy that. You won't recognize it. And that's why I say there's several reasons for Israelis, for the Israeli action. A primary one is to prevent this new government from actually succeeding. It's an attempt to break up the new unity government set up by the Palestinians.
Henry Siegman, I wanted to ask you about media coverage of the conflict right now in Gaza. In a comment to close the CBS show Face the Nation on Sunday, the host, Bob Schieffer, suggested Hamas forces Israel to kill Palestinian children.
In the Middle East, the Palestinian people find themselves in the grip of a terrorist group that has embarked on a strategy to get its own children killed in order to build sympathy for its cause, a strategy that might actually be working, at least in some quarters. Last week, I found a quote of many years ago by Golda Meir, one of Israel's early leaders, which might have been said yesterday. "We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children," she said, "but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill their children."
That was the host, the journalist Bob Schieffer on Face the Nation. You knew Prime Minister Golda Meir.
Yes, I did. I wasn't a friend of hers, but I knew her, and I heard her when she made that statement. And I thought then, and think now, that it is an embarrassingly hypocritical statement. This statement was made by a woman who also said, Palestinians? There are no Palestinians. I am a Palestinian. If you don't want to kill Palestinians, if that's what pains you so much, you don't have to kill them. You can give them their rights, and you can end the occupation. And to put the blame for the occupation and for the killing of innocents that we are seeing in Gaza now on the Palestinians. Why? Because they want a state of their own. They want what Jews wanted and achieved. I find that, to put it mildly, less than admirable. There is something deeply hypocritical about that original statement about, repeating it on the air over here as a great moral insight.